How can you live out your faith in our judicial system? We're going to talk about that and more on this episode of The Urban Perspective. What's up, world? Pastor Jerome here for this episode of The Urban Perspective, and I am joined by Ashleigh Parker Dunston. She is a Christian, one who has submitted her life to Christ. She is a wife. She's also a mother, and she serves as a judge for the 10th District here in Wake County, North Carolina, where she primarily focuses on family and criminal law. Ashleigh, welcome to The Urban Perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm glad that you are here, really excited about this conversation. So I just want to jump right in. So can you tell me, just first and foremost, what interested you into our legal system and into law?
Well, initially I did not want to be a lawyer.
Okay.
I wanted to be a doctor. So, it's funny how God would change your path. But whenever I did decide that I wanted to be in the legal field, my junior year of college, then I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. I felt like they could do the most. They're the most powerful person in the courtroom. They can dismiss everything and the judge won't see anything. And I felt like I could really make a big difference there. My dad was one, and I just really felt like that's where God had called me. And for some reason, he laid on my heart Wake County. I had never lived here before. I'm from Hickory, North Carolina.
Okay.
So, thankfully I was blessed to have my first job be here as a prosecutor.
Okay.
And I was the only African-American female out of 45 attorneys.
Wow.
I think that in that period of time, I did understand how important it was to have diversity and how important it was for me to be in that role. However, God literally had different plans for me. And so it was while I was working in that situation that it literally was as if God called me and said, Ashley, look at the bench. And when I looked at the bench and recognized that there was not an African-American female criminal district court judge, that was shocking. Out of 19 judges, we didn't have an African-American female in criminal district court. We had only one, and she was in family. Wow. And so, at that point, it was like, he was saying, look, there's some things and some places that I have for you. And, I'm going to place you where I've called you to be. And so that kind of started that process of trajecting me forward to 5 years later being here.
Wow, that's amazing. So you went to undergrad at Wake Forest University and you got your law degree from North Carolina Central University. So did you feel that tug more in undergrad or once you began to pursue it at North Carolina Central?
For the judge or for the?
Both.
Well, judge did not happen until after I was in the DA's office.
Okay.
And that was never anything that I ever anticipated going for. I thought it was just the highest of the high and there's no way, know. But literally, I would say being a lawyer was in my junior year of undergrad at Wake Forest.
Okay.
And then being a prosecutor, that was definitely right when I went into law. I was like, this is what I want to be. So I took nothing but criminal courses pretty much and pretty much set myself up to be a prosecutor, thinking that was going to be my lifelong journey.
Where did the fortitude come from? Because, people can be extremely cynical when it comes to our justice system, and we think that things won't change, especially when how some African Americans begin to view our judicial system. And we can be extremely critical of it, but I do think in order to see change, we need to be engaged in it. So where did the fortitude come from for you to say, I'm not going to just complain from the outside, but I'm going to be actively involved?
Well, I would say definitely from my dad. He was the first African-American lawyer pretty much on the western side of the state and was definitely the first African-American prosecutor in that area. And so growing up with him, seeing what he went through, but also seeing what change he was able to make in ensuring that the system is fair. And so I recognize that at that point, if we want to see the change, we have to be the change. We cannot just stand on a street corner arguing about things or just talking in our homes and on our couches about how the justice system is not fair, but then not encouraging our children to be police officers and lawyers and judges and probation officers and clerks and important people in the system, because the system is important. It's going to happen, right? But if we are not a part of that, then how is our voice getting heard? If we're not at the table, having a seat at the table to make the change, then what are we really doing?
Right.
It takes all of those people. It takes the people that are, advocating and changing policy, but it takes people getting up and doing something. And so the way I saw myself getting up and doing something was to become a part of the system.
Well, you're actually young and involved in this, and sometimes people think that, when we think of especially a judge, we're thinking that that's later on in life. So can you just tell us about that process of getting involved so young and being one of the youngest district court judges in our state?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely God. I mean, there's no other way to explain how, I was 24 when I graduated from law school, 25 when I started at the DA's office, and then at 30, I was appointed by the governor.
Wow.
I mean,
Is there anything left on your vision board? I mean, at 30, you're a judge at 30. I mean, that's an accomplishment, but I love to hear you say, you're giving the credit to God. You're not taking that yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no way. There's no way I can. It's not me, right? I mean, everything he did, the strategic steps that he took. I mean, for me to go to the Attorney General's office, to a job that I was told I was going to hate, ended up loving it, and for my boss to be Roy Cooper, the man who later on appointed me as governor to the seat that I'm in. I mean, that's God orchestrating things 3 years back. Things I had no idea about would even come to the forefront here. I mean, my story is just... My testimony is just wild, that if you heard it, you would know that there's nothing but God. So there's no way Ashleigh could take credit for any of that by any means.
Well, give us some of that testimony. I mean, you're teasing us, so just give us some of that story, and then we'll talk about how because that's going to be connected to how you bring that from the judge chair.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, like I said, in small town Hickory. So, I grew up in a situation where I was the one of the only African-American females in any of my classes. I mean, I definitely experienced racism as a young child throughout high school. Even as a lawyer, I've experienced situations of sexism mixed with, racism or, being young. I can't tell sometimes. It's all three. So I've experienced all of those types of things. And so whenever, like I said, God laid it on my heart, I went out and got mentors. And that were already in the positions that I wanted to be in, and asked them what they did. And so I would say to anybody, make sure that you get a mentor so that you know where you want to be and how to get there. And so ended up leaving here, going to the Attorney General's office, and here I mean the DA's office, and went to the Attorney General's office representing the DMV, traveling all over the state, which gave me more of a perspective of what kind of judge I wanted to be, because I'm seeing so many different Superior Court judges at this point. And so an opening came up, and I didn't get the first opening that I wanted. And I ended up trying again a little bit later, and God opened up that second opening that was actually even better than the first one. So, it's just been a roller coaster. It has been a lot of trust. It's been a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. I think a lot of people will see me in this position and say, oh, that was easy for her. Look at her, she's there. And it has been extremely difficult. But literally, God has been my foundation and my rock, and that's the only way that I was able to get through those times.
A lot of times people think that you can't be a good lawyer, a good judge, if you're a Christian, because Christianity, the foundation is truth and forgiveness, and you have to have thick skin and be tough. So can you, off camera, I know we were talking about, you can see upwards to 800 people in a week or something like that, right? And so how are you able to infuse your faith? And if you can, feel free to give us some examples from the judge chair.
Well, I, like you said, it's love, it's forgiveness is the foundation, and grace is the foundation. And so, I don't see myself as a judge. I don't see myself judging people. I see myself helping people. And so that is why God is my foundation and my core, because he teaches love. He teaches us to look at people as people, to show respect. I want to get it right, because I'm affecting people's lives and their families and their children and their situation and their money. And so, I'm not saying that you can't be a Christian to do that, but this is just what my core is. And so whenever I talk to or see cases of situations of domestic violence, or I see custody issues or something like that, I don't think that my faith has to be set to the side. I mean, yes, I can't necessarily, I respect the different separation of church and state, but my faith is my core. And so I'll have a conversation with somebody, and I take a little bit of extra time with them. I don't just guilty, not guilty, and you go on your merry way. I want to have a conversation with you and see if we could try to help you and figure out what can we do to solve this problem, even if it's something that's not even necessarily something I should be, necessarily or supposed to be handling right now. Let's talk about custody and child support. Are you seeing your children? No, I don't have jurisdiction over you, but that's something that needs to happen as well, because your child is the most important thing in this world. And we need to make sure that we're growing in that culture as well. So, I mean, just, it's so many different dynamics to
Tell us
my
about
job.
give me one of your most memorable cases where you were able to infuse your faith and try to give more than just a verdict, but try to give some hope.
Well, I definitely try to do that every day and just encouraging people. But I would say, there was a situation with a young girl who was cutting herself. And she was like 14, years old. And her two parents were fighting and bickering with each other. And they were fighting so much with themselves that they were completely missing this little girl. And I just took the opportunity just to give her a hug. And I said, it's going to be okay. Hold in there. Don't give up. And I'm crying in court, because my heart is in it, right? I have compassion for this situation.
Yeah.
And I have compassion for her. And I'm just like talking to the parents, and I was probably fussing, and I was just like, y'all got to get it together.
Wow.
You got to get it together for this child. And that is just where my heart is. My heart is a heart of service. And, I have that servant mentality because of how God calls us to be. And so in that, in seeing myself as a servant, I want to help as much as possible. And if that means that I've got to give somebody a hug, if they're okay with it, or if I've just got to go a little bit above and beyond my job, then I'm okay doing that to make sure that a difference is made.
So it is possible to be a lawyer or to be a judge and actually care.
Absolutely.
And show compassion. And I want people to hear that.
Yes.
And you're a living example of that, we don't have to leave our faith on the shelf. Because if you do, then it's not really real faith if that's what you do.
Absolutely.
But we can actually live that out. Well, I want to shift gears here because, we're in a voting season right now. Tell us about just the importance of getting involved where some people may say, my vote doesn't matter or not much has changed. How would you respond to people like that, and how would you encourage people to get involved in our system?
Well, if you will go out and buy a lottery ticket for a $1.6 billion lottery and stand in line for that, and you think you have a chance at that, why do you think your voice is not going to be heard at the polls? I mean, it is too important. It's like you said earlier, when we talk about, becoming a part of the system or becoming a part of the solution, this is how you do that. This is how your voice is heard. For example, when I put my name in the hat to run for district court judge, the second time I won by 7 votes. If those 7 people had stayed at home, I wouldn't be sitting where I'm at, hopefully making a difference that I hope that I'm making, right? Every time that you have an opportunity to vote is important. And it's not just voting for presidential years or, those kind of things. It's the local elections that matter. It's your midterms. It's the county commissioners. It's the judges. Yeah. Right? And people will say, well, I'm not going to be in the courtroom. There's no reason for me to educate myself on the judges. No, absolutely, because you never know if you're going to get a speeding ticket. You never know if you're going to be a victim to a crime. You never know if there's going to be a divorce, a cussy. You never know what's going to happen. And our courtrooms are public. So I encourage anybody to make sure you educate yourself on your judges. Come down and see us, see how we are, see if we're being fair, see if we're treating people with respect, see if we're see what we're doing. And that's for any election. There's no excuse to not be an educated voter when you have it all at the tip of your hands, Facebook and social media and websites. There's no reason why you shouldn't go into those polls, number 1, voting, and number 2, educated about who you're electing.
Yeah, speaking of that, just to kind of reiterate the importance of it, there are real issues like voter suppression for certain demographics of people who aren't eligible to vote based on decisions they made years ago. So I just want to kind of back you up on that. What would you say the importance of things like that, where we're seeing even legislation being needed to prevent things like voter suppression?
Well, I would just say that, if those are issues that are important to you, because I'm limited on what I can say about anything like that. But what I will say is that if these issues are important to you, that is why you need to vote. If your community is important to you, then this is why you need to vote for these issues, whether you support them or don't support them. Either way, we all have a duty. People sacrificed for us to make sure that we are out and voting. And your interests are at stake one way or the other, however you vote on those issues, but you need to make sure that you're voting.
No, thank you. Well, so police brutality, gender equality, and immigration have been some hot topics that we've seen, in our blogosphere, especially on the news, on the airwaves all the time. And these are very hot button topics. You talk about police brutality, you have pundits like Candace Owens saying, it's not really a thing.
I just sat down to an interview with Mike.com. They're here, they're recording this, and the founder gave me a stat. He said, well, 990 black men were shot and killed by police in 2016. Yes, but only 16 of them were unarmed.
In 2016, only 16 unarmed black men were killed by the police, and some have made it racial. And I think it's important that people understand that when we say police brutality, we're not only talking about white cops. We're talking about anyone who abuses power. But I take issue with the word "only" because I think God cares about all image bearers. So even if it was one, that's one too many. If there's an abuse of power, how would you respond to people who say things like that, who think police brutality is just a ploy to try to get more votes from the Democratic Party? They think more partisan than they do biblically. How would you respond to something like that?
I mean, every life matters. Every officer's life matters. Every person's life matters. These are people. This is not a video game. This is not, even in my courtroom, this is not a TV show. These are real people's lives that are being affected. And anytime that we say only, that is just pretty much pushing it to the side, like it doesn't really matter. And so, I think that is concerning. I would hope that we can change and get out of this mindset of just being so partisan, because we are dividing ourselves so much. And the people that are getting the most affected that I'm seeing are our children, are really becoming affected by all of this discord, and not just partisanship, but just in families and everything. I mean, the enemy is busy. And if you don't believe me, come to the courtroom every day and you can see how busy the enemy is. And it's so important for us to get back to the core of remembering that these are people, and there is love, and that is not just only this and only that, and brush it off. We can't do that.
Yeah, that's good, because I do see there seems to be more commitment to patriotism than it does to our Christian values of, again, the imago Dei, the image of God, Genesis 1:26, saying every person, even if they're a non-believer, based on them being made in God's image, they are worthy of dignity, honor, and respect. And so I'm encouraged to hear that you bring that perspective to the courtroom, that you are judging, you're hugging people, you're actually caring about their lives after they're out of your presence. And tell me, have you been able to maintain that? Because it sounds like you're seeing a lot of stressful, dramatic situations back to back to back. You're talking about, you said child support and custody cases and then criminal. So, I mean, how do you maintain hope when you're seeing so much bad stuff throughout the day?
I mean, it's definitely, number one, God, right? Getting into my word daily I've started that like this year specifically, and it has really changed my life. And every morning, just taking that time to meditate on his word. And every time I'm into the devotion, it happens to be something that I'm either dealing with the day before, or dealing with that day of compassion and patience and respect, or, those kind of trust. I mean, it's just always something that I need at that moment. And so I think I can go into work with a positive perspective, which is extremely important. And then there's those moments, those glimmers of hope, right? Where somebody comes in and says, even today in the elevator, a young lady said, you were with me, you handled my case when I got beat. And I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm doing better. I said, I'm really glad to hear that. Or a young man told me one time in child support court, it wasn't even his case, and he said, Judge, you throwing out nuggets of knowledge out there. You just said something that changed my life. I'm gonna get my life together. And even just to change one life. Yeah. I don't want job security, right? Like, I consider myself a rehabilitative judge. So I consider myself that, like, if there's a drug problem over here, let's get to the root of that problem, right? If there's a mental health issue, let's get to the root of that problem. Like, let's solve the problem so that way you don't have to come back. Because my hope, and I have true hope, that one day we will have a world without crime, that we won't need judges. That is my hope. And I might die with that hope, but that's okay. Because I'm hoping that every single day I can change at least one life, or change at least one situation to make a difference, a positive difference in Wake County, and hopefully ultimately in the world.
Wow. Well, right now, Ashleigh, so, to close, I want people to be inspired. And I think just hearing your stories is inspirational. So there's a young lady or young man who's going to watch this, and they're thinking, I want to get in the legal system, but I just don't think I can maintain my faith and I can do it. I want to get in it, or they feel like they're going to be blocked. What would you say to that person that will watch this?
We need you. We need good people. We need people of faith that truly believe, right? On Saturday, I was at a conference at Shaw for their divinity school, and a young lady said, well, what is this infiltration thing? And then somebody else said, well, what is this, what can the church do? And I'm like, the church can continue to pray for its leaders, but it also can encourage our young people to be a part of this process. If somebody's discouraging you, but you feel like God has laid it on your heart to make that change and make that difference, and you feel like this is where you are, do not give up on that. Do not let anybody tell you what you can't do. I had a teacher tell me I probably would not get into Wake Forest, but I continued to go ahead and pursue it and continue to apply. Continue to apply yourself, find mentors, that are in the system. If you want to come observe court, you can always come watch me. You're more than welcome to. There's avenues for us, but we need everybody. We need Christians, we need diversity, we need gender diversity, we need all of that, because that is representative of what our court system looks like. And my experiences are unique that make me even more aware of trying to treat people with respect, because I know that I've been disrespected or felt disrespected in the system or felt like I was not treated fairly. And so I go out of my way to try to make sure that I do that. And there are people who have other experiences, and we need you. We need that in there so that we can balance out the scales and hopefully restore justice back in our system.
Judge Dunston, thank you so much for being on The Urban Perspective.
Yes, Pastor.
You've been tuned into The Urban Perspective. I love you. God bless you. Peace.